everyone. My name is David. Welcome to church visit number 25 of 52 churches in 52 weeks, round 3. If you're new to the channel, for one full year, we explore a variety of different churches. This third round, I'm also sharing some insights into my recent conversion process. And no matter your faith or political background, we're trying to support families in need with our fundraiser with St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. So all the information is on the side of this video if you want to take a look into that. As I record this, we are just days away from the 2024 U.S. presidential election. And obviously there is a number of issues at stake, but with this channel we explore churches, and I thought it would be interesting to attend and worship at the churches of the U.S. presidential candidates, both Republican and Democrat, in an unbiased and neutral way as best as I possibly can to show you what their spiritual life looks like. The previous weekend, we flew out to New York City to attend First Presbyterian Church in Jamaica, New York. This was in a part of Queens. And it was here that a young Donald Trump and his family attended church in the balcony, and also where Donald Trump was baptized as a child. He attended Sunday school lessons and he received his Bible in 1955, which was the same Bible that he laid his hands on to be sworn into office as the 45th President of the United States. It was also here that I learned that he was confirmed in June 1959 around the age of 13. After that time, the Trump family moved on to a different church, Marble Collegiate Church in downtown Manhattan, and I attended that as well. I'll have a future video on that visit as well. Whether you're for Trump or not, I found this church visit to be absolutely fascinating, and I encourage you to take a look at that video because this church has completely changed since Donald Trump last attended as a child 65 years ago. To compare and contrast, this past weekend we flew out to San Francisco to attend Third Baptist Church. This is the church that current Vice President Kamala Harris has called her spiritual home. Her pastor that she has mentioned in many interviews is Reverend Amos C. Brown. Reverend Brown was only one of 8 selected students to participate in the only class led by Martin Luther King Jr. And since that time, Reverend Brown has been a huge social rights activist, and he's been the senior pastor of Third Baptist Church for close to 50 years. So with this historic congregation, it is deeply rooted in social justice and advocacy, and that has been at the heart of this church's identity for generations. Just like our previous visits, the goal here is not to sway opinions. This is to give a close-up look at the spiritual lives of both presidential candidates that you will be voting for. I'll play a few minutes of what the service looked like and sounded like inside, and then I'll be back to share some more insights about the history of Third Baptist Church, what I took away from the service, and just to share some unique insights into the spiritual home of Kamala Harris.
Let us all join and sing, one heart, mind, and spirit. Charles Price Jones is great hymn. Deeper, deeper, deeper. Deeper, deeper, in the love of Jesus. Higher, higher, in the full wisdom.
Kamala Harris may have the most unique religious background of any U.S. presidential candidate ever. So she's Baptist, her husband is Jewish, her father is reportedly Anglican, and her mother was Hindu. So her childhood church was 23rd Avenue Church of God in Oakland. It's here where she says that she met a loving God and she sang in the choir as a child. Apparently, she also would attend the Hindu temple with her mother, though I can't find any news on what the name of that temple was. So I can't find any pictures of her attending church like I could with a young Donald Trump, but what's interesting is this past week, her VP Instagram account showed a 1-minute video of her meeting with the pastor of 23rd Avenue Church of God. And she says in the video that her favorite part of church was going to the basement into the kitchen area where all the women were cooking, and she'd grab a plate to bring home. In the 1990s, that's when Kamala Harris met her current pastor, Reverend Amos C. Brown of Third Baptist Church. So the way that they met is Reverend Brown, he was trying to run for the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. And Mayor Willie Brown got him in contact with Kamala Harris, who was an up-and-comer herself and had these aspiring political goals. So over time, they became very tight. She started to attend his church. And obviously now it's been about 3 decades. So when President Biden dropped out of the race for re-election, that same day, Kamala Harris gave a phone call to Reverend Brown asking if he could pray for her husband, and also for the country. So how did Third Baptist Church get started? I think it's important to look into the history of this to understand where it is today. Because in the 1850s, African American Baptists in San Francisco were relegated to sit in the balcony of the city's primarily white First Baptist Church. So in 1852, those parishioners decided to form the first colored Baptist Church of San Francisco. And they would hold it in various homes, the very first in the home of Eliza and William Davis. And for the next 3 or 4 years, they would have a steady supply of white ministers who would help until finally they got their own minister. What's interesting after reading into this is slavery still existed during this time frame. So California became a state in 1850, just as all of this is getting started. And at that point, California, they had laws against slavery, but there wasn't anything really to enforce those laws. And the 13th Amendment to abolish slavery wasn't ratified until 1865. So some of the tricky type of legal situations was what happened to those that were enslaved that lived in California before it joined the Union in 1860. So you had all these issues. One interesting thing I read from this is one of the founding members of the first colored Baptist Church of San Francisco that would become Third Baptist Church is he came to San Francisco during the Gold Rush era, and he essentially worked to gain his freedom. After he worked to gain his freedom, he would still work so he could rescue family members down in the South. And from what it sounds like, it would be $1,000 per head. So the church moved to a couple different spots. And then eventually it renamed itself to Third Baptist Church in 1855, but it couldn't legally change its name until 1908. 1906 was a really bad time period because that's when a great San Francisco earthquake shook along the San Andreas Fault. A number of buildings were just destroyed. I guess reportedly 700 people died, but then they found out later actually that number had increased to 3,000. So the church building remained, but then came fires, and the church building could not survive the fire. Fortunately for this congregation, they rallied together, and within 2 years, they had raised funds to secure a new building. 1932 would be a big year for Third Baptist Church. It hired Reverend Frederick Douglass Haynes Sr. He would serve there for 32 years. So he served during the Great Depression and World War II. Now, 1945 happens after World War II wraps up, and San Francisco completely changes, especially with the African American demographic. Whereas before the population may have been 4,500, after World War II, you had 50,000 African Americans living in San Francisco. The reason was because of a number of people were working during World War II in the Bay Area. And after the war ended, they had to go somewhere and live. And because so many were in San Francisco, they remained there. So Third Baptist Church just stepped up like crazy when it came to community services to help all those that were now living in this city. So the church membership grew during Reverend Haynes's tenure, where it went from about 150 people to close to 3,000 to 4,000. So from what I understood, the church building had to be expanded, obviously. So the current building has been standing there since 1952. Not only that, but it became a place for many political leaders. And it often was nicknamed as the Silk Stocking Church because many well-to-do attendees were coming. Even an hour before service would start, the sanctuary would start to be full by that time. Even they had a number of well-known speakers. One that I heard that was a big deal in 1958 was W.E.B. Du Bois, and also Martin Luther King Jr. as well spoke there. So as soon as Reverend Haynes moved on, he gave it to his son for a few years, and then eventually the church hired Reverend Amos C. Brown, who now has been serving there for close to 50 years. In regards to my Sunday morning, one fun fact: Third Baptist Church is essentially a Hail Mary pass away from the Painted Ladies. It's this colorful row of Victorian houses that are perfect for a postcard. If you ever saw the TV series Full House, the Painted Ladies are featured prominently in the opening credits. So as I'm walking to church, I have to pass this. And it was just very strange because all I'm picturing is the Tanner family inside one of these homes. So when I got to Third Baptist Church, I noticed that they have a lot of gates that had been opened for the church service. Parking is an absolute nightmare. So later on, after I had found a parking spot, several blocks away, it sounded like they would have a security team that would help with a garage near the back of the church to help people and worshipers be close to actual church service. One thing that was a little bit different, and I had heard about this done at other type of churches, is that he would have people and visitors stand up. Reverend Brown will have you stand up for a long time, so I'll say that. So a few other people stood up. The junior reverend kind of ran around with a microphone. So we would just say what our name was, where we're from, and just kind of something about ourselves. That was not the only case where I had to stand up. During the church service as well, Reverend Brown also asked any type of new visitors to stand up again. And this time it lasted for at least 5 minutes. So if you were a first-time visitor, they had, and I hadn't seen, I've only seen this at one other church, but they had an Ushers Guild. So they were decked out in really nice uniforms, and they had white gloves. So with the white glove service, kind of like a concierge service, and they gave everyone these welcome packets. One thing that stood out was this. It was 5 different programs that they do to reach out to the community, especially when it comes to education. So a few things in here that they feature is tutoring. It looked like some online programs, also a music academy, something called Friday Night Live, where it sounds like it's just getting involved in the community, and then also a parent and family development program. One observation I'll just bring up, with Third Baptist Church here and also with First Presbyterian Church in Jamaica, the one that was Donald Trump's childhood church, both those signs still have up social distancing signage. And I haven't seen this in other churches that I have visited for quite some time. So it makes me wonder, some of these stickers were falling apart, and it just kind of made me wonder with the daily reminders of these stickers just throughout the sanctuary area, if maybe that has had an impact on attendance. I don't know. But it's just strange to see that still October 2024 as I film this. To do this recap, I want to be as accurate as possible, and I won't sugarcoat it. Reverend Brown was not a fan of Donald Trump, and his name was brought up a few times. There was one situation where he was talking about what happened in 1952. So at that time, Billy Graham was doing his crusades, and in Jackson, Mississippi, he was doing a crusade where there was a red rope segregating the white worshipers from the black worshipers. And he faced a lot of flack for doing this, but he personally removed that rope, and that helped with race relations at that time. Well, apparently since that time, his son Franklin Graham is associated with Donald Trump. And there's a part of the Sunday school where he brought this up and kind of called out Franklin Graham for not doing the same thing that his father does for race relations. Obviously, serving as Kamala Harris's pastor, I noticed there was quite a kinship that he had for her. It was almost kind of like a father-daughter type of spiritual relationship that they shared from what I observed. And there's one part during the service where he was keeping tabs on her. She was campaigning in Philadelphia, so he made sure to pray over her, and also how the country, like, there's just too much division. And like with her, like, we can bring this spirit of love. There also was certain parts where, just certain chants would break out. There was one where it's like, "We got the victory." And it doesn't matter what the polls say or what the commenters say, we got the victory. And there was a part of the service where people were chanting out, "Baptize me." And then another part of the congregation was saying, "Serve me, Lord." So, baptize me, serve me, Lord. Baptize me, serve me, Lord. So it kind of was this musical chant back and forth in the congregation. He mentioned James at one point too, that was very strong, and how faith without works is dead. But I remember where there was one part, as some more chants were going on, when he says Jesus, it's not just Jesus, it's Jesus, Jesus. So it's just that powerful ending in his tonality that really resonates when you listen to him preach. The sermon featured Acts 6, verses 1 through 7. And early on, there was much more talk about race and classes and just overall support for Kamala Harris. Even at one point during the sermon, I noticed a gentleman walk in that had Harris Walz signs. And early on, he mentioned Frederick Douglass. So he's the most important figure of the civil rights movement in the 19th century. And as Reverend Brown said, he was a hellraiser and a licensed preacher. So in 1801, that's when Thomas Jefferson started the 4th of July celebrations at the White House. And in response, Frederick Douglass criticized this on July 5th, 1852, the very same year that Third Baptist Church was organized as a first colored Baptist church of San Francisco. And at that point, he was quoted as saying, "What to the slave is the 4th of July?" So with the Acts 6, verses 1 through 7 scripture lesson, as Reverend Brown said it, Peter, he was going to do some affirmative action, and he was going to fix a broken situation that had broken out where widows were not receiving food. So the 12 decided to choose the 7. And with this 7, it would be able to help where they couldn't assist. So as Reverend Brown said, they chose some Greek folk. And so he transitioned this story into how America is a broken system right now and how it needs fixing. So with the church declining and the religious right gaining steam, he warned against Project 2025. He ended the sermon with Martin Luther King's words, "Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last." And he added in, we're free from disease. We are free from poorness. We are free from fear. We are free from big corporations. And he found that the church will bring the nation back. We're going to wrap it up on that. Hope you enjoyed as best as I could to remain neutral and unbiased. taking a look at the churches of some of the U.S. presidential candidates. So we finished up by visiting Tim Walz's Lutheran Church in St. Paul, Minnesota, Donald Trump's childhood church in Queens, and now Kamala Harris's church in San Francisco. I had a few requests to visit JD Vance's Catholic Church in Ohio. Just due to the timing, I just could not make it out there in time. Depending on the results from the election and if it's relevant, I may make a future visit on that as well. I'll also have a future video on Donald Trump's church life with Marble Collegiate Church that he attended for 50 years, so stay tuned for that. So as always, make sure to like and subscribe to stay tuned for future visits. I'd love to hear your comments below. If you do leave a comment, please be respectful, considering politics can get quite vile at some times. But until next time, hope you have a good one.